This is Moon in Manuscript. I'm Arkwright Thorne, author of romantasy and space opera, and I'm here today with my Halloween hangover sunglasses to talk to you about mindset and National Novel Writing Month, or now Novel November, or whatever else you'd like to call it. So I wrote my first novel during NaNoWriMo. I think it was 2014 or 2015. I'm not sure. Feels like a long time ago now, but I really enjoyed writing it. And I think the biggest thing that I got out of it when I was writing and that push to get 50,000 words in a month was turning off my inner editor. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that today, because I think the biggest thing that differentiates productive writers who get books out into the world and ones who continue to work but struggle to finish or share their work is often mindset. And that mindset has a lot of different facets. I think, one of my favorite books I have on my shelf back here above my head is over here is the Successful Author Mindset by Joanna Penn. And it's had so much help for me over the years. But I think in particular, I think something about turning off your inner critic is really important to learn. And it's hard to do that without a goal like Nano. So however you're planning to approach this, whether it's a program like that or something else, practicing writing without criticizing your work can be really good. And that can be hard, especially if you've done critique groups or different programs where maybe it's even just the books you're reading. As you start to learn more about what makes good writing, you start learning to criticize it or notice your own personal reaction to what's happening in the story or the way that it's written. And that's really good. It's really good. You have to hone your taste. You have to find those skills. And we can only learn those skills through analysis or more reading or other things like that, classes too. But at a certain point, they get in the way, because there is a part of us that when we're creating needs to be thinking about the love of the thing and the thing that we wanted out of it and the reason why we are drawn to books in the first place. And the negativity of, oh, did I do that right? Or am I writing well? Or am I writing as good as this person that I look up to? It's not super conducive to creating, if that makes sense. Like most painters, when they're painting, they're thinking about their subject, what it looks like, how to portray it, especially if they're doing something realistic. But if they're being more expressive, it might just be, what did I want to do here? This is a beautiful color. I love painting, right? Or maybe there's some frustration and I can't quite get this right, but they're not thinking about how does this painting compare to Georgia O'Keeffe, right? Like they're not thinking about that. And if they are, it's probably not that helpful, because that comparisonitis, like if you've ever heard the expression, like comparison is the thief of joy, right? I firmly believe that joy and play is what creates good art. It's what creates things that people want to experience, because when you feel vibrant when you're creating something and when you're having a good time, it comes through in the work. Now, I will say that with a caveat, because I have written scenes that I really wasn't sure if they were good, or I slogged through them and I wasn't sure how they came out, and that later they actually were really good and people really liked them. So it doesn't necessarily mean that every single minute of the writing day, if you're not having a ball, the book sucks, right? But the reason why you picked that book, right? The reason why you're writing that paragraph, it shouldn't be about comparing it to Hemingway or to Anne McCaffrey or to Heinlein or whoever you'd like to compare yourself to, Rebecca Yarros. Like you need to compare yourself to yourself, and how they did it is how they did it. Maybe the choices that you're making would be bad in one context, but are good in the context you're making them. One of the things I'm reading this year, I'm reading through the works of Terry Pratchett. And if you try reading them, I'm reading some of the beginning ones, and everyone always says to me, well, they get better. But I actually really like them. I've really enjoyed them so far. And, there's many books that I read that published from indies and from trad that I see flaws in them, but that doesn't mean that I don't enjoy them at the same time. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I think even these early books are that flawed from Pratchett, even though people keep kind of implying that they are. I've loved them. They've been a great time in a hard year, but they break a lot of rules, right? They don't start immersed in a character. They start way far out in an omniscient narrator narrating from space, looking out down at the fantasy world. Like, there aren't that many places where that would work, but with the disc world, it works. It makes sense, and it fits the kind of feeling that he wanted to create, and it probably fit the time that he was publishing it, and the publishing world at that time was open to that. If you tried to imitate the same thing now, would you get the same response? Maybe not, right? And or it would seem very derivative, right? But we could say that that's a rule, that we should start immersed in a character, probably in third person or first person. But there might be somebody out there that knows how to break that rule in a really fun way that makes something in the second person, or talks from a narrator's perspective and makes it work. That doesn't mean that you should go just break every rule. I'm not saying I would recommend that. Sometimes when you're starting out, it's nice to just tell a story that isn't necessarily challenging literary conventions and work on your fundamentals of building amazing, interesting, likable characters and plots that are really fun and exciting and challenging and interesting and turn the pages, right? And you can't always do all those at the same time. But there are rules, and sometimes we can break them. Okay, so sometimes we can break rules, sometimes it helps to know the rules, but sometimes it helps to just shut up your editor brain and just write. And so if you have a sense for who your character is, and if you have a sense where you're grounded in that character, and if you don't have a sense for that, I have a video on how to get grounded in your characters. But if you have that sense of what you're there to write and you're ready to run, you shouldn't think about at the same time if you're doing it well. Don't think about that. In fact, you're actually probably kind of a bad judge of that. So have you ever looked at a word so long that it started to look like it was spelled wrong, even though it was spelled right? When you look at something too long, you lose your objectivity. And I see a lot of writers struggle with this and learning how to regain objectivity of their work, how to maintain some distance, or even knowing whether or not they have objective distance from their work or not, right? As when I was trained as a graphic designer, this is something that we learned about, which is how to know whether we could really see the work clearly that we were doing. And in that case, we would learn techniques for helping that, like taking a walk around the block was a suggestion I got from an early professor that I still use. I got suggestions to take the thing I was working on and hang it on the wall and just live with it. And that sometimes over the days and hours and months, you would start to see things that you hadn't seen before and that you could make it better, right? That just staring at it didn't show you. Or, when you show it to someone else, they might make a connection, like, that bust that you drew actually looks like a hot dog to me, right? So similarly, you looking at it, you're only able to see your little part of the world and your perspective on your work. But other people can tell you so much more. So sitting in your tower kind of alone, analyzing your book and trying to make it amazing before you show it to someone, it's really not the most helpful, productive way, right? Make it as good as you can. Make it as much as you want to make it. I'm not saying cut yourself off and don't work on it if you already know that scene sucks and you need to delete a character. But there is a point. There's a point where someone else looking at it is going to help you more than you looking at it again, right? And so when it comes to writing quickly in National Novel Writing Month, or however we're calling this, Novel November, or if you're writing a lot in November, I encourage you to not think about it from a critical perspective, to just sit and have fun. Turn off your editor. Stop thinking about whether this is right or not, and think about writing something else. You can always edit it later. This has been Moon and Manuscript. I'm R.K. Thorne, author of Romantasy and Space Opera. You can find my books on my website at rkthorne.com or shop.rkthorne.com. And I hope you have a great month of writing. Write lots, and happy, happy Novel November. Like and subscribe.